It was the kind of morning that should have been quiet. Rain fell softly over the cemetery, and 100 umbrellas stood like black flowers in the crowd. My mother's funeral. Her final goodbye. I stood in front of her casket, heart numb. My brother David stood beside me, too calm. Too still. That silence between us wasn't grief, it was tension. Old wounds buried under decades of family secrets. David and I hadn't spoken properly in nearly a year before the funeral. Not since Mom told him she was cutting him off. I never knew the full story, but I knew enough. Gambling. Debt. That strange visit to the hospital, where she came back quieter than usual. When the ceremony ended, people left one by one. Hugs. Tears. Condolences. But David didn't say a word. Not until we were the last ones standing. "We need to talk alone," he said. We drove separately to our mother's house, the same one we grew up in, with peeling green shutters and a front porch that always smelled like lavender. Inside, nothing had changed. Same sofa. Same curtains. But everything felt haunted. He poured himself a drink. Something brown and strong. "I know what you did," he said flatly. I blinked. "What the hell are you talking about?" "You changed the will." I couldn't believe it. Couldn't even speak. "Are you serious?" He scoffed. "You were always the favorite. Of course she gave you the house, but you didn't stop there, did you?" That's when I realized something. He didn't want the truth. He wanted control. "I have proof," he said, pulling a folder from a worn leather satchel. "But I'll stay quiet for a price." Blackmail. From my own brother. Inside were fake bank records, screenshots of emails I'd never written, and a photo of me with Mom, one he'd twisted into something it wasn't. I could already imagine how this would look to people who didn't know better. "You're sick," I muttered, slamming the folder shut. "Or smart," he shrugged. "It's up to you." I left in silence. Shaking. Hurt. Angry. But also scared. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying his words, that smug grin, the smell of whiskey on his breath. I could still hear my mother's voice in the back of my mind, the way she used to say, "David's going to learn the hard way." I spent the next 2 days digging. Calling the lawyer. Visiting the notary. Emailing the firm that handled the estate. Every single document was untouched. The will was legitimate. My mother had left me the house. And David. Nothing. But the truth wasn't enough. He didn't care about the truth. He wanted revenge. I called him. "Meet me tomorrow noon, the park by Elm Street." He showed up wearing sunglasses and arrogance. But I came prepared. I handed him a folder. The truth. Certified documents. Email threads between Mom and her lawyer. Her handwritten letter explaining everything. He read silently. His posture stiffened. "She really left me out?" "Yes, David, and you know why." He looked down at his hands. "She knew, didn't she, about the gambling, the credit cards, the money you stole from her bank account?" He didn't deny it. "So what now?" "Now you disappear. If you ever come near me again, I'll show everyone the real story." He didn't say a word. Just turned and walked away. I stood there, surrounded by rustling leaves and the faint sound of children laughing in the distance. I had my dignity. I had the truth. But I also had a broken heart. Because sometimes the worst betrayal comes from the people who share your blood. And when that trust is gone, there's no getting it back. Before the will. Before the funeral. Before the silence between us turned sharp enough to cut. There was once a time when David and I were inseparable. We were kids in that same lavender-scented house. I remember us running barefoot on the porch, our knees always scraped, our voices echoing through the summer heat. Back then he was just my big brother, the boy who protected me from bullies and snuck cookies from the kitchen when Mom wasn't looking. Our mother was a soft woman, with tired eyes and a voice that could either soothe or silence a room. She worked 2 jobs, kept the lights on, and still found time to leave love notes in our lunchboxes. But I noticed something even back then, the way she worried more about David. The way her voice got tight when the school called. The way she'd say, "He's just lost in the world sometimes." David started changing around high school. Hanging with the wrong kids. Coming home late. Lying. Stealing. I once caught him sneaking out Mom's credit card and pretending it was nothing. I wanted to believe it was just a phase. But it wasn't. I remember the first time he got arrested. Shoplifting. Mom cried all night. She never told anyone, not even our relatives. "People don't need to know," she'd whisper, holding her tears like glass. Over the years, I went off to college while David stayed behind. He never left the house. Never got a steady job. He said the world didn't give guys like him a chance. But I think he just didn't want to try. He started borrowing money from Mom, first small, then thousands. She sold her jewelry once to pay his debt. Told me not to worry. He'll get better. But she was tired, and I saw it. Every visit home, her voice got weaker, her smile more forced. And David. He never saw her exhaustion. Or maybe he just didn't care. One winter, she slipped on ice and broke her wrist. I rushed home. David didn't. He said he was busy. And yet, even with all of that, she never removed him from her heart. Only from her will. 2 days after our tense meeting in the park, I received a letter. Not from David. From her lawyer. Inside, a key. And a note in my mother's handwriting. "There are things I never told you. For your protection. But if David ever turns on you, you'll find answers in the old writing desk." My stomach twisted. That desk had been locked for years. I always thought she kept letters or taxes in there. But what I found wasn't taxes. It was a small cassette tape labeled June 2023. A handwritten timeline of suspicious transactions. A copy of a restraining order filed and never submitted. And tucked behind it all, a photo of her. In a hospital bed. Bruised. I sat down. Inserted the tape into a dusty old recorder. "If you're hearing this, it means David's hurt you. I'm sorry. I protected him too long. I knew he'd snap one day. That's why I changed the will. That's why I hired the private investigator. But I was too scared to go further. I hope you'll be stronger than I was." I froze. She knew. She knew about the money missing from her retirement account. The threats he made. She even recorded one of them, a shaky phone recording, but it was David's voice. "You owe me, Mom. After everything I gave up. If I don't get my share, I swear, I'll make you regret it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But I had proof now. I called her attorney immediately. Within hours, a quiet, gray-haired man named Mr. Alvarez arrived with 2 boxes and a calm tone. "Your mother instructed me to deliver these if any dispute arose after her passing." The boxes contained documents signed under witness, outlining everything. Her reasons for excluding David. The investigator's full report. A log of phone calls and emails. A letter addressed to a lawyer she'd once considered hiring to press charges. I had everything. Everything. Except peace. Because knowing she lived in fear, and that David still had the nerve to blackmail me, made my stomach turn. I went to the police. Quietly. The officer listened, then leaned back. "You want to press charges?" "I want him to understand that he can't do this. Not anymore." They opened a case. But that was only the beginning. The detective assigned to the case, a tall, tired-looking woman named Navarro, called me in 2 days later. "We've reviewed the evidence. Enough for fraud. Possible elder abuse. But you'll need to testify." I nodded. "I'll do it." Meanwhile, David had gone silent. No more calls. No emails. But I knew him. Silence wasn't retreat, it was buildup. And I was right. A week later, I received a letter from David's lawyer. He was suing me, claiming coercion, undue influence, and, laughably, emotional distress. It was bold. It was desperate. Mr. Alvarez smiled grimly when I showed him the letter. "Good. Let him try. This gives us the opening we needed." Depositions were set. Lawyers circled like vultures. And suddenly, my grief became legal paperwork. My mourning turned into court dates. But I showed up. Every time. I sat there while David lied under oath. While he cried fake tears. While his lawyer painted him as a misunderstood son. Then it was my turn. I read the letter my mother wrote. I played the tape. And I looked at David, not with anger, but pity. "You betrayed her," I said, "and now you want to pretend you're the victim?" The judge didn't even take a full day to rule. The will stood. His lawsuit was dismissed. But what came after was worse. David spiraled. He began posting online, accusing me publicly, creating videos, conspiracy threads, digging up old photos and twisting stories, trying to turn strangers against me. But I stayed silent, strong, until one morning, a knock came at my door. A delivery, a box of old family albums. No note. But inside, taped to the back of a childhood photo, was a USB drive. I plugged it in and found one last recording. My mother. The file began with her voice, tired but steady. "If you're listening to this, I know things have gotten worse. I wish I could have protected you more. But I trust you now to carry the truth." Tears blurred my vision as I clicked open the next file. Letters. Scanned documents. Audio memos she'd never shared before. One letter was to David. "You were my son, and I loved you. But love isn't a blank check. I hope one day you understand that." Another was to me. "You always were the strong one. Don't let him break that in you. I gave you the house because it was always your home. Don't let him take that from you, not in memory, not in guilt." There was even one to her lawyer marked "only open if challenged." She had thought of everything. Even a family friend, an old neighbor named Mrs. Patel, had contributed a witness statement. I saw him yell at her. I saw her cry afterward. She told me she was scared. Piece by piece, her ghost defended me. And slowly the weight began to lift. Because it wasn't just my fight anymore. It was hers too. And in every word she left behind, I felt her strength. Now it's time for me to live. Not in fear, but in peace. After everything, the funeral, the threats, the lawsuit, the tapes, I found myself sitting alone on the front porch of the house. Our house. The house on Lavender Hill. The wind carried the faint scent of the lavender bushes that lined the walkway. She planted them when we were kids. I used to think it was just her favorite smell, but now I think she knew. She wanted something to stay blooming even when everything else faded. Inside, the house was quiet. No echo of David's angry footsteps, no rustle of legal papers, no old arguments trapped in the walls. Just peace. I had thought winning the case would bring me closure. But it didn't. Closure isn't a verdict. It's not even justice. It's choice. It's choosing to let go of what you can't fix, and deciding what kind of story comes next. I began cleaning. Slowly. Not to erase the past, but to honor it. I boxed up old photos. I donated clothes. I even framed the letter Mom wrote to me and placed it on the hallway wall. Every day, I'd walk past it and hear her voice in my mind. "Don't let him break that in you." I started writing again. Nothing big, just journal entries. But it helped. I wrote about childhood summers, about Mom's worn-out slippers by the door, About the time David and I stayed up all night building a Lego castle we swore we'd live in one day. I wrote to remember who we were before everything cracked. And one morning, I opened a letter addressed to me from the local community center. They had an opening for a volunteer grief counselor. Someone who'd walked the path. I applied. Not because I thought I was healed, but because I was healing. And maybe someone else out there needed to know that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It just means learning to breathe again. On the 1-year anniversary of Mom's passing, I lit a candle by the window. No ceremony. No crowd. Just me. And the house she gave me. A house that once held a family full of secrets. A house that weathered storms, both literal and emotional. A house that now holds truth, strength, and a soft scent of lavender. I still don't speak to David. He moved away, last I heard. Tried to reinvent himself online. But I no longer look for his name. He doesn't live here anymore, not in this house, not in my story. Some endings don't come with fireworks. Some come quietly, with soft steps and slow mornings. And sometimes, the truest revenge is peace. If there was your brother, would you forgive him?